There perhaps is no better place to talk about mass transit and transportation infrastructure than right here at Newark Penn Station, where New Jersey Transit Rail, light rail, bus lines, PATH, and Amtrak all intersect. Passing through here each day may be a Seton Hall law student who takes the PATH in from Jersey City, a young professional from Newark headed into work in Manhattan, a family of hockey fans riding in from Metuchen to catch a game at the Prudential Center, and maybe even a senator or two boarding an Amtrak train to Washington. In a typical year, Newark Penn Station is the 7th busiest rail station in North America and among the most busiest in our region. But we all know this past year was anything but typical. For lack of a better word, the COVID-19 pandemic derailed mass transit budgets across the nation and here in New Jersey. The law school students' classes went virtual. That young professional started telecommuting. Those fun mass gatherings ceased to exist. And yet the essential workers we all depended on, the nurses and hospital staff, the grocery clerks, the warehouse workers, still relied on public transit and transit workers to get to their jobs. For entities like New Jersey Transit, shutting down wasn't an option, even as ridership plummeted, fare collections failed, and tax revenues dried up. They had to both provide service and take on increased operating costs to protect the health of their customers and their workforce. This unfortunate combination of falling revenues and soaring costs left transit systems across the nation with funding shortfalls that threatened their ability to pay their workers, keep up with repairs, make capital investments, and maintain service. That's why Senator Booker and I fought so hard to include robust aid for mass transit and transportation in the American Rescue Plan and ultimately deliver approximately $2 billion in rescue funds to New Jersey Transit. As Kevin will tell you, without those additional funds from the federal government, New Jersey Transit would have faced a 13% budget hole in its FY23 budget and a whole lot of bad choices for closing that gap. Long story short, if Congress failed to pass the American Rescue Plan, workers and commuters would pay the price. That budget shortfall could have forced New Jersey Transit to institute a devastating 15% cut to their workforce, with layoffs and furloughs affecting up to 1,800 employees and even deeper cuts in the years ahead. Likewise, New Jersey Transit would have needed to slash weekday service for rail and bus lines alike and dramatically reduce service over the weekends. This would mean even more headaches, longer wait times, and delays getting to work for New Jerseyans who already spend too much of their morning and evening commutes in traffic. Finally, New Jersey Transit would have had to delay much-needed improvements and take an axe to its bold $17 billion five-year capital plan to modernize its infrastructure. Simply put, the situation was dire. And might I remind everyone here today that the passage of the American Rescue Plan was never a given. That could have been our future. And if not for the tie-breaking vote by the Vice President, all the things that Senator Booker and I fought for would have gone up in smoke. From the direct payments and expanded tax relief for families to the multi-billion-dollar infusions for New Jersey Transit and other transit agencies. Fortunately, we prevailed, but I do want to be clear about something. The American Rescue Plan was just that. It was a rescue plan. It was not a long-term solution to our nation's outdated and crumbling infrastructure. Consider that in New Jersey alone, there are 502 bridges and over 3,995 miles of highway in poor condition, which have contributed to commute times increasing by nearly 9% since 2011. That's why President Biden has been adamant from the start that our goal cannot be just to end this pandemic and return to business as usual. We have to build back better. In the coming weeks and months, the President is expecting even bolder action on infrastructure from Congress. Indeed, the American people have been waiting for decades for the kind of large-scale investment in 21st infrastructure like President Biden has proposed in his American Jobs Plan. I can tell you that what we have been doing is living off the greatest generation's investments that made us the envy of the world in infrastructure and transportation nexuses. But for several generations now, we have done nothing to improve or build upon, or even to a large degree maintain that infrastructure. And as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I can tell you we cannot compete with countries like China and succeed in the global economy if we do not start making bold and strategic investments in our workforce and infrastructure. So we're going to do everything in our power to make sure New Jersey's priorities are front and center in the America Jobs Plan. We have to complete the gateway projects, so vital to the economic future of the entire Northeast corridor. We must expand the Hudson-Bergen light rail, modernize our light rail systems here in Newark and in Camden, build cleaner bus fleets, all things proposed by New Jersey Transit in its ambitious 5-year plan. We have to reduce traffic congestion and build livable communities with affordable housing and transit options that connect workers and families with greater opportunity. And we've got to invest in projects that will cut carbon emissions, reduce pollution, provide clean drinking water, advance environmental justice, and protect our coasts and our climates. This isn't about just physical infrastructure, this is about the lives of people in our communities, the access to jobs, the access to economic opportunity, remedying failures of the past, creating a cleaner environment so that we can reduce respiratory illnesses in a state that has far too many of them, being able to ensure that we are prepared for the next generation. So once we put this pandemic in the rearview mirror, we've got to look ahead to the future. We have bridges to repair, tunnels to build, we have more rail to lay down, new stations to open, we have emissions to cut, a planet to protect. We have a vision for the kind of 21st century infrastructure that creates a more equitable economy here at home and prepares America to compete abroad. And we're going to do everything to fight to make sure that happens.